Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of REI Behind the Scenes. My name is Diana Lizarazo and today's guest speaker is Shawn Quigg. Now before we get started, I want to share some exciting news with you. We have a social networking platform for the real estate investing industry. If you are an investor, if you are a mentor, or you are a professional, then you want to be a part of this transformative platform that will help you. It's going to change the way you work. It's going to help you collaborate with like-minded people, find a safe space to work in, and you'll be able to know what are all the events that are going on because we have a public calendar where everyone can put their events on and you can check out what is going on this week, this month, this day. So if you are interested, then go on to realestateinvestorfam.com and you can download the app there. You can create your free account and you can get started and enjoy and have some fun. And you can check out Shawn Quigg's profile and see what he's about and learn more about him. Now back to the show. On REI Behind the Scenes, our guest speakers are here to help you by sharing their journeys on projects they've worked on. So we'll get to hear about numbers. We'll get to hear about the project. What was the intentions of the project? We'll be able to also hear about the fun part, all the problems that were encountered, how they were solved, and if it was something new, what they would do differently next time. So if you guys are ready, let's send Shawn some hearts, some thumbs up, some happy faces, and let's get him on the stage. While we wait for Shawn to come on, and hold up, I'm going to try to do this first. Yeah, okay, I think we see it. I see Shawn, do you see mine? I saw yours and I accepted it. Oh, there we go. Hey, how are you?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for coming on. It's always so much fun to chat with you. And let's just get started with just tell a little bit about yourself to the viewers. So what's your real estate strategy, your profession, anything you'd like to share, your experience?
Sure. I have been a real estate investor since 2015 when I got started completely by accident. And that's when I went to law school and bought a house and started renting out the rooms to other law students, not even realizing what house hacking was. And before long, I was cash flowing. And so I took what money I had and I bought a second student rental and rented those rooms out, and I was cash flowing again. And that's when I started to see the power of what could come from real estate investing. So after I got through law school and articling and got licensed, I began to try and find a way to help real estate investors. So I'm a lawyer that helps real estate investors, and in terms of strategy, I have done a lot of selling recently. But generally, I'm a BRRRR investor. I also have flipped houses. I've wholesaled houses. I've owned multifamily. So I've been all across the spectrum and learned tons along the way.
Love it. And I think it's so true. I think as you start talking to lots of real estate investors, you start realizing it's not really about, I mean, there are certain niches we do specialize in, but generally we have kind of dabbled in so many, or some of them just kind of fall into other ones, like you said, wholesaling. If you find a deal doesn't work for yours, but you can give it to someone else and then you end up selling that assignment. So there are a lot of ones that even just intermingle and cross with each other.
That's right. There's a spectrum, right? A deal can fall anywhere on the spectrum, from wholesale to wholetailing to closing and fixing it up and refinancing, and so we just kind of go with it and see where it lands.
100%. So now today, which deal are we going to be talking about?
Well, I've got a couple. I've got two deals on the go now that are sales that have lots of lessons built into them and have some pretty interesting strategies to try and get them moved to new buyers. And if we have enough time, I've recently had a client use some very creative financing strategies to buy a large asset. So I'll talk a little bit about employing that strategy that others might be able to employ in their real estate investing business to help get more deals done.
Yeah, I love it. And actually, I think that's also one of the nice things when, in your case, you're a lawyer working with real estate investors, so you get that extra view into a lot more deals than you would just personally working with for yourself. And it's nice because like that you get to see a lot of different creative ways of doing things that you may have not encountered yourself. So I love that. So tell us which one would you like to start with first, and just tell us like what the intention was with the project.
Sure. Well, let's talk about the cottage project. I've talked about this one before. This is the one where I have just learned lesson after lesson. Right from don't be afraid of private money to make sure that you don't stop taking action. But now it's for sale, and it's not really selling. So what we've had to do is, first of all, make sure that we're working with someone who is local to the area in terms of a realtor. Having that local expertise has been helpful to help us understand this particular pocket. It's a pocket that has its own characteristics compared to the rest of the area, and given that it's waterfront, there's a limited number of buyers for waterfront type properties now. So really understanding sort of pricing strategy, listing strategy, how to target the right type of buyer. Right, not every buyer is going to want this, and so this has been really interesting. It's still not sold, and so we've sort of had to pivot to maintain it. In the meantime, we've got it rented out as a short-term rental, and have hired a management company to help us with that, and that's been going really well so far. But this is a deal, we bought for $160,000, and I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but we're into this for at least $250,000, but probably closer to 300. But the value at one point got up to over 500,000. So we were going to have pretty close to a perfect BRRRR or nearly there. And had we done it or completed it on time, meaning much faster than the 2 years it took us to flip this property, we would have sold at the top of the market mid-COVID and have done very well, but we didn't. So that was lesson number one.
I'm curious, now talking about that, what were the delays that happened to make it last 2 years?
Well, number one, it was hard to find people to work. So this was right in the middle of the time where the federal government was handing out COVID money, and it was hard to find people to do anything. Multiple times.
I hear your pain. I hear your pain.
Yeah, well,
I think
John
everyone was
Crawford,
going through that.
yeah. So multiple times we had people be like, "Yeah, I'll be there Monday," and then they just don't show up. And so largely, a project that needed a full crew only had 1 to 2 guys on it at any given time. And then we hired a crew, like a full crew, a company, and they were on it for a little while, but they were from out of town, and they'd show up, they'd leave London, at 9 or 8:45, and drive that over an hour to get to the cottage, and then they'd work for 4 or 5 hours and turn around and come home. And so we weren't really getting anywhere. You just get going, and they'd pack up and leave. And then some of the work products started to suffer as well, so we moved on from them. And then we managed to get another guy who was full-time in there, who did a tremendous job. But one of the reasons why it took so long was because of lack of people. Another was that we ran out of money partway through the project. We ran out of money, and I've talked about this lesson of not being afraid of private money. Back back when we were first starting this project, this was my first time really getting into super private money. And it was nerve wracking. I was afraid. I was afraid to go look for it and ask for it. I didn't know how this project was going to turn out. When we bought it, it was supposed to be a wholesale. We thought we had plenty of equity in it on the buy, and turns out we had none. So it was not,
But it
the wholesale.
was none just because of the amount of time it took,
No,
right? In that
no,
sense,
like
or
we bought it and then immediately listed it and only got one offer, and it was for less than what we bought it for. So
mm,
we thought we had lots of equity, and you'd think a waterfront property for 160,000, you would have lots, but we were wrong.
and maybe that's what you were saying, where that local realtor would have helped out to be able to give. Because I know lots of, I don't know if this was this with a realtor. This was where was it that was found and done like
Yeah,
privately, the sale.
it was a wholesale deal.
As a wholesale deal. Yeah, because sometimes, like you were saying, even that having that realtor or a person, like you said, that knows that area well, tells you a lot about it that can help you really identify what is the best price or if the price is good or whatever. Because it is very hard to tell, especially when it's not your area. And like you said, the uniqueness of it,
Yeah.
there's just so many things.
So, the lessons keep going on this. We found that some
Love
of the
reminiscing on
uh,
projects.
some of the exterior walls had to be replaced. So, I learned how to almost build a house. We went
Mm.
right down to the floor joists, to the ceiling joists, to the studs. We poured footings. We took down exterior walls and put them up. Right. So I learned a lot about construction. I learned a lot about what it takes to almost build an entire house, and that was really eye opening. I started to really understand the mechanics and the logistics of how houses work, how real estate works from a practical point of view, not just from a cash flow point of view. So that was really interesting and fun to learn because I use a pen and I type for a living. I'm not very good at hands-on stuff, and so to be in the midst of it, and I was on site quite a bit. To be in the midst of it and learn was very interesting for me. It was
And you
cool.
said this one was your first project, right?
My first like major renovation project. Yeah.
Major renovation project. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is nice. That is nice. One of the things, like, it hurts working on big projects, but like you said, it also at the same time, the learning from it and everything that you learn about it, you come out with like so much knowledge
Oh,
after it.
yeah. So tons of knowledge, and I've learned, to not be afraid of private money. Right. So
Mhm.
had I learned this lesson earlier, I would have immediately started the raises. 2 weeks after the project didn't sell. On the hotel, we closed, we listed the next day. I waited 4 months 3 months before taking any action. I should have waited 2 weeks and then moved on raising capital. And then just taken the listing down and gotten to work. Hired a full company, come in, 4 to 6 months, maybe 8 months, get this whole thing done, and either get it sold or get it rented out. That was the big lesson. Speed, man, speed is everything, and because moments of inaction are literally dollars at the door, and we've watched lots of wealth evaporate on this project, which is just not lots for the project itself, not in the grand scheme of things.
Mhm. Mhm.
A lesson and not repeat it.
Yeah, and sometimes you need those. I feel like those big ones that come with so many problems are actually, I feel like, the ones that really propel you forward after the fact, because those learning experiences are so ingrained in you that I'm pretty sure you'll probably never do a lot of those mistakes again, just
Never.
because they hit home so hard, right? And it's great that you're still standing. And I think that even just comes with, as long as you're still problem solving and still trying to move forward. I think it's really when you quit that really is when people haven't learned their lessons from it and they just completely stop. And because there's always a solution for things, which that leads me to the question on, so what did you end up doing? You said like you had private financing, um, and and I'm assuming that was part of the reason why your money got depleted. So what did you do next to be able to, or what happened and what did you do next to be able to continue for moving
Well,
forward?
when we finally finished the project, we got it listed, it didn't sell, and so we transitioned to refinancing. So we did refinance into what I would call a B minus lender, and that freed up some capital. That got some people paid back, not me, but some others. And
We're always the last one to get paid, right?
right, yeah. Well, I'll probably never get. I'm probably going to end up taking a dive on this one, but that is what it is. So that freed up some capital to buy us some working capital to get furniture into the place, get it on Airbnb, and so Airbnb, you know, here's another lesson I learned. I'm like, I gotta. I'm good at what I do, right? I'm a lawyer. I'm running a law practice. I'm doing that. I'm helping people there. I don't have time to learn how to be an Airbnb manager. I have
Mhm.
run Airbnbs in the past. I was running it, at my student rentals when COVID hit and the students moved out, and I had some boots on the ground, but I did most of the work, and that was okay. But now it's a little bit different. That was a 6 bedroom house rented out by the room. This is a one cottage, so one
Mhm.
is 100% vacancy as opposed to 17%. And so what I learned was I should have hired a management company right away. We missed out on probably 2 months of prime time renting with only a couple scattered 2-day bookings as opposed to being fully booked. And as soon as we hired a property management company that does short-term rental management, we started to fill up. And
Mhm.
I wouldn't say we're super profitable, but we're full or pretty darn close, which is a lot better than being empty.
And probably
And so,
covering your expenses, which is the important part at the moment
yeah,
too.
yeah. So if it doesn't sell, now we're running simultaneous strategies. If we can sell, and we've offered seller financing for a portion of the purchase price, and I've told the realtor that because I'm in the industry, I understand it, and so there's really no offer that's too creative for me to consider. I will review anything. I may not be agreeable, but I'll review just about any
You're
offer.
at least open to it, which is the
That's right.
important part. And I mean, and that's what it is to be in our industry. Is all about being open to hearing it and just understanding what it
Yeah.
is. And like you said, if it works, great. If it's not, maybe it gets tweaked, or maybe it just doesn't happen at all, right? So it's just like at least it's brought out there because there are some people that do some really creative deals, to be honest. And same thing, like probably the next one we'll talk about. Um, like you take it even for yourself. I being a private lender, I one of the reasons I love private lending is because I get to see a lot more deals because I can't work on so many deals at a time, but I can lend out more money to see a lot more other deals too.
Right.
So at least I'm like doubling or a little bit more the amount of deals I'm seeing going through a process. And so you get to see a lot of things that you may not, and especially those people are different than you, they think different than you. So you kind of get to see how they think, how they behave, and then you're like, oh, like I would have never thought on that on my own because our life experiences, everything are so different. What we've seen is so different.
That's right. And being a lawyer, I get to be the beneficiary of that
Mhm.
almost every now, which is great. Uh,
Mhm.
Actually, I had a client that did a very creative purchase deal recently. That's probably worth sharing about. I obviously won't share addresses or
Yeah.
names, but a
Let's finish off the
tremendous.
one yours first, though. But I would love to
Sure.
hear that one because even I'm always curious to hear about different creative deals. Um, So, so for this deal, any other problems that you wanted to cover that you fell through learning experiences that you wanted to share?
I think we've hit them. Don't stop taking action. Don't be afraid of private money, and be ready to pivot to plan B, C, and D.
Mhm. And I think I'd like to add, which is basically what you're also saying, but in a more direct way, is maybe the reason, and maybe this wasn't your reason, but someone's reason to not getting, let's say, someone to manage the Airbnb is because maybe of money, for example, and you're just like, you're trying to save every penny because you're in a dire situation of like, I'm already bleeding. And sometimes those things of bleeding money kind of, I feel like, block us to just pay it because it'll, like you said, you won't lose those 2 months. You're already there getting people taking care of the property for you, and then the money's going. And so, like, I think those are always, because I feel like I hear the same thing happen for construction, right? We've actually had a couple people, because my husband has a renovation business. They'll ask him to do the work, like, they'll ask for a quote. The quote is too high for them, and they go to someone else because there's always cheaper labor out there. But what the problem with cheaper labor is, you really have to babysit them. Like, for example, us, like, we will hire cheaper labor, but because we have someone that manages, my husband
Yeah.
manages the projects. So if we need extra people, we don't really care because we know, like, what are the regulations around things. We know how things have to be. So we'll do the cheaper labor because we have a team of experts also managing those people. But if you're a new investor, an investor that doesn't know it in detail, and you go for the cheaper labor, we've
Yeah.
seen it. People have put themselves into disasters. They have come back to us. We've tried to help them out, but it's like now you've paid, let's say, double the amount. So it's just like sometimes it's like really getting to know what it is that you're getting into. Don't I think sometimes I find it very, I think it's very hard for people. It is very hard when you're in it, but not looking at the dollars, but looking at the experience, looking at what you're getting out of it, like looking at the important things and not the money that's coming out, because of understanding like the return on the investment is so important. Because yes, okay, fine, I have to dish out another $1,000, but I make 3,000. Okay, I'm making $2,000, but sometimes you don't think on the return.
Yeah. Yeah. One real simple way to put it is, if you try and save pennies, you lose dollars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so I just wanted to say that because basically I feel like you're also saying that too, is just
Yeah.
like sometimes you just gotta spend the money or make those decisions and just get it done because it will benefit. But also we always need those little hard lessons to tell us that too, right?
Oh, yeah.
So let's
Oh,
get
yeah.
on to this creative financing one of your clients
Okay.
has dealt with.
So my client was buying a large building, 30 units, I think, for several $1 million, and negotiated this really great deal with the seller. The seller wanted to give vendor financing, and our clients wanted vendor financing, but of course, seller financing in second position gets real squirrely with first position lenders. They don't want it for whatever
Mhm.
reason. Usually it has to do with cash flow. They're anticipating there's not enough cash flow to pay their mortgage, in which case, uh, they might end up having to go into power of sale, and no one really wants to do that. So they generally don't want seconds. So instead, what our guys negotiated was, they were buying in the form of a limited partnership. So anyone that doesn't know what a limited partnership is, that is a flow through type of entity, where the investors invest money into the limited partnership by buying limited partnership units, and then the general partner, usually a corporation, uh, enters into an agreement with the limited partners to basically act on their behalf. The limited partners have no involvement. All they do is put the money in. They earn the return depending on the terms of the limited partnership agreement, and the GP does all of the work. Well, in this case, the seller agreed to buy units in the limited partnership to close. And so the net effect was the same as a VTV, except no mortgage going on title, and the lender was okay with it
That
because,
is very interesting
yeah, because it wasn't about cash flow anymore. The limited partnership units paid out returns based on the income. And so if the income was less, perhaps the payments were less. And so what ended up happening was the amount that we needed to send to the seller's lawyer as the lawyer for the buyers to close was decreased by the amount of money that the seller was investing into limited partnership units.
Mhm.
And so the end result was our clients ended up getting paid to buy this building.
Oh, the clients ended up getting paid.
Yeah, because the amount that the buyer bought the units for was such that there was more mortgage money coming from the lender than was necessary to buy.
Mm. That is very creative. That's very interesting. You would never think to do it that way. I wonder why the seller would want. Oh, yeah, I mean, I understand why the seller or like why they're proposing not because I guess the seller would be going in second position and that was going to give problems, like you said, for the first position.
Yeah.
So they moved it to shares. I wonder why though. I guess because it still meant the same thing for them as the limited partners, so they were okay with it. I guess
Yeah.
you don't know that part, right? That's like on
Well,
the other side.
the class of units that they bought were such that the terms resembled what you might get in a VTB. 8% preferred return, a personal
Mm.
fee on return of capital, on the payment of what the equivalent of dividends, which are not really dividends, they're distributions, but but this is not a strategy that is just reserved for people or entities buying 30-unit buildings for several $1,000,000. This can be done in other ways for smaller deals for smaller investors. So if you're out there
Mm.
watching, send me a note, send me a DM on Instagram, and I'll walk you through how to do it.
Yeah, it's great to hear because, like you said, you never know how you can tweak it to work in like smaller deals, because I'm sure in smaller deals, you wouldn't like really smaller deals, you wouldn't have like a GP/LP structure because that's way too
Yeah,
expensive. But just hearing that, I could see, for example, like maybe you're putting them in your share structure of a joint venture agreement or something that works out somehow. I don't know.
you're
But it definitely
pretty
just
close.
starts, pardon?
You're pretty close.
Yeah, but it generally starts obviously getting the mind going of like different approaches that you can take to make things happen. And that is one of the good things I think of the commercial side is that generally they're all entrepreneurs. So they are also in that mindset. Entrepreneurs and real estate investors, it's all about being creative and, you know, figuring out what it is that you want to get out of this and having to be able to and getting what you want satisfied and what the other side wants satisfied. The creativity, even the business world, you see like all these different creative deals. I've seen these like in business world. I've seen some really creative deals with like interest and bonuses and I forget what you call them, GSC things. Like I've seen some really big deals happen. You just see like all these different levels of different ways of making money to just so everyone can win in it. So it's just and you just see like the bigger the deals, that I feel like the more creative you see things. Like I saw a deal, this was a business deal, but it was $130 million project. So it was a big deal. And the creative financing, my God, I've never seen so many like different types of like instruments to make this thing happen. It was so interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, the more sophisticated the deal, the more sophisticated the buyer and seller,
Mhm.
which means the more realization that it's not just about the one party. It really is about creating some form of partnership one way or the other.
It is 100%. Anything else that you wanted to discuss about that deal? Or did that deal have any kind of delays or anything
Oh,
that
yeah.
was missed? What kind of like that you had to be discussed?
You know, that deal had a set of problems that really weren't avoidable by the buyers or by us. We dealt with a lawyer for a seller who we think, we don't really know, but we think has only ever really helped people buy and sell single family homes. And so this is
Mm-hmm.
a sophisticated commercial deal. And some of the things that this lawyer was saying to us made no sense. She, nearly terminated the deal without her clients even instructing her to do so. Just wasn't ready to play in this space yet. So
Mm-hmm.
that presented a real challenge because normally on deals of this size, the lawyers on the other side, can match us in terms of being able to think through a problem and solve it. It's a
Mm-hmm.
much collaborative way of advocating for your client. But in this scenario, we were up against the equivalent of a brick wall. Like it was a real challenge, but we did get it closed. We did get it across the finish line and managed to make
Mm-hmm.
everything.
Yeah, and usually, actually, I would say that brick wall generally happens is like because of basically you're saying like that lack of knowledge, and you're challenging in a way where it's just like they don't know what their next steps are because the commercial side is very, very different to the residential. Like those contract documents, I feel like are like stacks of paperwork because
Oh
there's
yeah,
just generally so much involved in them, so much legal involved in it. So I can definitely see how daunting that would be for someone. And I'm surprised, to be honest, that lawyer took it on themselves. Like, fine, if someone brings it to you, but I would have been like, okay, get another lawyer, like partner at least with someone with experience so that you're learning, but also not kibosing a deal, that could be amazing for both sides, but you're not experienced enough to take care of it because you have no idea what you're doing. It's just like, why do that to a customer? Um, just like partner with someone and be like, it's something new, a great learning experience.
yes, I do know. But in the end, she she came around, so it worked out.
Yeah, and I'm sure like that. I mean, for everyone, big learning experiences and hopefully she decides to learn more about it or work with someone that knows about it. Because, and maybe like that, some people don't realize how different the two areas are. Because sometimes you think, oh, it's residential, it's a single family home. You don't realize like, but a building is a different story. That's something completely different, different regulations, so much more involved. You think like, oh, it's like a house, it's a building, it's all the same thing. No, it's not.
No, the financing looks different. Like at this level, you don't just go get an insurance binder. Your lender hires an insurance consultant who
Mhm.
tells the lender what insurance they want, and then that becomes the requirement. Right? So
Mm.
different. That's just one component, right?
Yeah,
That's just one.
yeah. There's so much. I know there's so much legal. I've seen some of people's legal work for it. Just even the legal work for the purchase agreement. I've seen some of the things like the purchase agreement documents. There's like so much
Yep.
legal involved in it. We have got like our measly little like what 5 pages, and they're like 100 pages in with all their legals.
There's a lot at stake when you're talking large assets. There's a lot at
Mhm.
stake. And every
Mhm.
word matters. I know it seems silly, but every word matters. Sometimes there's a case, I can't remember the name, I learned about it in law school, where there was $1 million dispute and it all hinged on a comma. A
Mm.
comma. I can't remember the name of the case or the context, but in essence, the placement of the comma in a sentence was determinative of
The
who
word.
who was entitled to $1 million.
Mm. Oh my God, that's a very scary comma to be missing.
Well, like that's exactly, and that's why you find good lawyers, right? You find people who are thinking to that level. Now,
Mhm.
even the best lawyers, like that's a crazy level of of lawyering to be down to a comma, but it just goes to show that whether it's lawyers or realtors or mortgage brokers or contractors or coaches or
Mhm.
anybody really, you got to make sure that you're working with the best.
Yeah, doing that due diligence in all areas is so important because you just don't know. what can and that's even I think even for example that investor that did that deal, I'm sure they probably noticed what the lawyer was doing, but also that probably investor was probably at least experienced enough to push it and make sure that the lawyer also doesn't kibosh it too, you know?
We don't know. Obviously,
Hmm.
we don't get to talk to them, but yeah, it was fun.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Any final comments that you wanted to share with the audience
You know,
before
you
we
said
finish?
something earlier, and it's been something that's been ringing true in my mind for a little while now, and that is the only losers out there are quitters. Things get tough, and they have gotten tough on a number of projects for me and for others, for my clients, for lots of people in our industry. They are not getting any easier anytime soon. But the only people who lose are people who quit. So keep going, keep marching. Take one step towards a solution every day, and you'll get there.
Hmm. I love it. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Um, yeah, I completely agree with you. Shawn, thank you so much for coming on. I loved hearing both your stories. They were amazing, so much value in them. If you guys love what you heard from Shawn, he will be tagged on here so you can follow him. You can see what he's up to. You can DM him. Same thing, you can go into REFAM and you can check out his profile there. It will be in the caption below. And if you guys love what you hear from me, you want to stay tuned with the shows that I have going on or what I'm up to, same thing. I will be on here. You can follow me and you can also check me out on REFAM. Shawn, thank you so much for coming
Thanks,
on. It was so great to
Anna.
chat with you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Well, I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.